Final Fantasy is one of my favorite franchises in all of gaming. I love Final Fantasy. If you've been with the channel for literally any point of time, you'll know how much I adore the Final Fantasy franchise. I literally mention it in some way in every video I've made. Seriously, go back and check, it's actually kind of concerning. Everything about these games captivates me with their stories, their gameplay, and their music. In the beginning of my Final Fantasy journey, I found my way to Final Fantasy XV. I'd like to say it was because of the great reviews I heard or the incredible soundtrack, but really, the game was $6 at a game store. Due to the fact that I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake when I picked up 15, I tossed it on the shelf and it became lost to my backlog. As I was diving deep into the Final Fantasy series as a whole, I learned more about 15's origins as a Versus 13 and some of its development struggles, and also how the Royal Edition improved the game. As time went on and PlayStation Store sales would pop up, I ended up upgrading to the Royal Edition. You'd think now that since I have the definitive version of the game, I would finally reel Final Fantasy 15 out of the backlog and experience the game. That would have happened if two little games dubbed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition didn't Enderman teleport into my life. It only took a concert and one of my close friends to start Final Fantasy 15 for me to actually pick it up, sit down, and play through the game. Now that I've finished the game, and believe it or not, gotten the Platinum Trophy, I have a whole lot to say about Final Fantasy 15. There's a lot that I loved, but also some things that I really disliked. So sit down, relax, grab your cup noodles as I talk about my love-hate relationship with the history, story, characters, gameplay, world design, and music of Final Fantasy 15. Just a wee bit of a disclaimer before we begin. My playthrough of Final Fantasy 15 was on the Royal Edition, which did include a whole bunch of additions not found in the base game. The Royal Edition / Windows Edition is definitely the way to go if you plan on playing or replaying this game, as you will get all of the added content, including the DLC episodes. Which, speaking of, I will not be talking about any of the DLC episodes added post-launch. I obviously will be saving those for future content. With all that said, I hope you enjoy the video. Believe it or not, Final Fantasy XV wasn't always Final Fantasy XV. The game actually started development as Final Fantasy Versus XIII, which was going to be one of the 3 original titles in the Fabula Nova Crystallis Final Fantasy XIII sub-series. Led by character designer and Kingdom Hearts director Tetsuya Nomura, Versus XIII was supposed to take place in a fantasy based on reality, and would have been set in a world that was similar to Earth. Unfortunately, Versus XIII went through a whole ton of development struggles, with many aspects of the game changing around every 3 months and shifting development from one engine to another. After many years and a drip feed of information, it was decided that Versus XIII would be turned into Final Fantasy XV and moved from the PS3 to the PS4 and Xbox One. No hope for this one coming to the Wii U, I guess. The game was officially unveiled as 15 at E3 2013, a whole 7 years after it was originally announced. Along with the change to 15, Hajime Tabata took over the role of director and brought in the team that made Final Fantasy Type 0 to aid in development of 15. When Tabata took over 15, the game was about 25% complete or so, and there were some aspects that actually did carry over from Versus 13 to 15, like the main 4 guys and a few other characters, some locations, and some of the music. Finally, in 2016, Final Fantasy XV released on the PS4 and Xbox One after a decade of development struggles and changes. I think it would have been really cool to see what a fully realized Versus 13 would look like, but I am happy with what we got in the end. It seems like a lot of Nomura's vision for Versus 13 will still live on through the Kingdom Hearts series, as Quadratum and Yozora were introduced in Kingdom Hearts 3 and its DLC Remind, and will most likely play a part in Kingdom Hearts 4 if that ever does come out. Now that we've taken a trip to the past and seen the origins of Final Fantasy 15, let's jump into the game we did end up getting. Final Fantasy games, above all else, are known for their engaging, exciting, and emotional plots, and these are certainly found in Final Fantasy XV. Final Fantasy XV takes place in the world of Eos, a world that is not too dissimilar to Earth, except for, magic and crystals and giant astral gods. In Eos, 2 nations have been at war for hundreds of years, Lucis and Niflheim. As of late, the two nations have begun talks of peace to end this centuries-long war, with one of the main conditions of this peace treaty being the marriage of Lucis's Prince Noctis and Niflheim's Oracle Lunafreya. Prince Noctis is Final Fantasy XV's protagonist, and in the opening hours, Noctis, as well as his three companions, Ignis, Gladius, and Prompto, travel to Altissia so that he and Lady Lunafreya can be wed, and they all lived happily ever after. Yeah, right. This is a Final Fantasy game. Nothing ever goes to plan. As Noctis and the boys leave the capital of Insomnia, yes, the city is named after my inability to sleep, their car breaks down, which is, by the way, the most redneck way to start the plot of a Final Fantasy game. After the car gets repaired, the quartet make their way to Golden Key, where the ferry service will take Noctis to Altissia. Turns out, all the ports have been closed by the Empire of Niflheim, which is not helpful whatsoever. The party is able to secure ferry tickets thanks to a guy named Dino, but the homies are forced to stay the night at the resort. While the prince and his entourage are traveling and sleeping, the Empire arrives in Insomnia, probably because they can't sleep, and start the peacemaking process with Lucis. This, however, was a setup, and the Empire attacks Insomnia, killing the king, destroying Noctis' home, and worst of all, stealing Lucis's crystal. The only one on the planet, mind you. The four wake up to this infuriating news, and after hearing this, Noctis receives a call from Cor, who is a member of the Crown's Guard. After meeting up, Cor gives Noctis the task of claiming all of the royal arms that his ancestors left behind for him, and would grant him the power to reclaim the throne from the Empire. The plot goes from let's go get married to reclaiming the lost throne. Classic Final Fantasy shenanigans, if you ask me. As you're moseying your way around the open world raiding royal tombs, you will encounter a mysterious and off-putting man named Ardyn. Turns out, Ardyn is the Chancellor of Niflheim and the main antagonist of the game. Ardyn's true goal is to plunge the world into darkness through the Star Scourge, which is a darkness-spreading plague that has great benefits, such as allowing demons to run rampant across the world. Ardyn succeeds in this by removing the Oracle from the situation. So now, Noctis and the boys have to go into the Imperial capital to reclaim the stolen crystal and kill Ardyn. The story twists and turns, and while most of it's good, I did feel like there were some oddly paced segments. The game is split up into two main segments. The first half of the game is set in the open world and is mostly focused on getting the royal arms. And then the second half, after the events in Altissia, is where more linear storytelling is introduced. I did think the plot was much stronger in the linear parts of the story than the open world part. I was way more invested when the plot was going on at a steady pace. I also think it was kind of a miss to put the story-related arms in the lamest dungeons. Most of the story-related royal arms are in caves, and the rest are relegated to side dungeons. One of these side dungeons is a giant volcano, and unfortunately it has literally no plot significance. It's not a big issue, but it did just kinda underwhelm me. My last issue with this game's plot is the final boss, and big spoiler alert, so if you don't want any spoilers on this game, just skip to the time shown on screen and you'll be free from any spoilers. The final boss of Final Fantasy XV was like super underwhelming. Whoa. I'm gonna stop myself right there. So for this section, I was completely planning and written out to talk about how disappointed I was by the final boss of Final Fantasy XV, Ardyn, and well, I'm sitting here and I'm gathering footage for the game, because for some reason I record my scripts before I gather footage. So I was playing through the final boss just to grab footage for my game, and I'm sitting here with my headphones on, and I am just astounded by how 100% like wrong I was about this fight. All my arguments that I wrote were invalid. So this part's actually replacing what I had to say about Ardyn as the final boss of the game, because as I was replaying it, it was difficult. Now, granted, I'm playing on a level 120 file, so it wasn't difficult, but like if I was playing this straight up as like my first playthrough like I did, it would be tough. The Armiger section, I forgot that it starts with an actual fight in the city on the ground, which is actually kind of tough. Ardyn, he flips and twirls around like Noctis does, and then you go into the armor section, and while that part isn't necessarily difficult just because of how overpowered the armor is, it still is a really cool part of the fight, and a really cool, like, I don't know, area of the game, because you're just kind of zipping around the city and things are inverting and stuff. So yeah, suffice it to say, I should have gone back and played through the final boss before I recorded the video, because then I wouldn't have to edit in this off-script kind of goofy part. But yeah, so I really did love the final boss. The final boss was awesome, and I am now going to have to go through and cut out all of the parts where I talk bad about it, because I'm just wrong. That's like pretty much all of my problems with the plot. The first half was a little slow, but the second half is better paced in my opinion, and I think it would have been better to put the story-related arms in some of the cooler dungeons. Let's talk about what I liked though, because, you know, you're cheering up the mood and all. I do like the core plot of this game. I know it probably came off as I hated this game's plot, but I actually really don't. I think it's a fun adventure with some things that I just didn't like. I really liked the cross-country road trip aspect of the first half of the story. I like road trips in real life, so I quite enjoyed all the sightseeing in the car. And I already said this, but the pacing and the intrigue of the second half really did get me hooked. It's a good story, and it feels very Final Fantasy, and there was a lot of humor just in the characters' dialogue and banter. Speaking of, let's talk about the characters in this game, and thankfully the main cast is quite small, so it makes up for how much I yapped during the plot synopsis. Final Fantasy XV's protagonist is Prince Noctis Lucius Callum. Noctis fits the brooding, angsty anime protagonist mold perfectly. It's definitely valid for him though, because of all the loss he experiences and the heavy weight of being the true king of prophecy and all. He gets kicked while he's knocked down, but overcomes and pushes through all of the trash thrown at him and fights for his boys and his kingdom. He's also like super sarcastic, which I found hilarious. Traveling along with Noctis is Ignis, who is the wise guide of the group. And he cooks too. Like cooks food, not the slang term. But I guess he does kind of cook in the slang way too. Then there's Gladius, who is the muscle of the group. He's also Noctis's shield, which is just fancy for bodyguard, and he does have a strong sense of duty to the royal family, as he really takes defending Noctis and his other friends very seriously. And finally, there's Prompto, who is the perky marksman of the group, as well as the photographer. Prompto is very witty and loyal, and I love the tale of brothership between all four of these guys. They all have each other's back, and even though the boys go through their own rough patches, they don't ever stop watching out for each other. What can I say? I'm a sucker for the power of friendship plotline, and the road trip bros hit me in all of the feels. The boys were actually one of the parts that were retained from Versus 13. Which I think is pretty cool. I'll also mention Lady Lunafreya here, who throughout the story is shown that her and Noctis have a deep childhood link, which doesn't make their marriage seem like a marriage just for peace. They actually have a history. And Luna is also like Noctis' support from afar through Umbra and Gentiana. Luna is also the Oracle and can communicate with the gods and hold back the Star Scourge. She actually does hold a pretty key role, and it sucks that her DLC episode got cancelled, because that would have been really, really interesting. Finally, the main antagonist of the game, Arden. This dude is creepy to the max. He just shows up randomly before he's formally introduced and asks Noctis all these cryptic questions and stuff, and then when he does reveal himself, he like mentally tortures Noctis. He's just straight up evil. And he's also like super manipulative of everyone around him. His goal is to plunge the world into darkness and rule this dark world and become its true king. I liked the cast of characters in this game, especially the brothership element of the relationship between the bros. Overall, I did enjoy Final Fantasy XV's plot, albeit I have some personal gripes with it. It had a feeling of a grand journey to save the world that I love so much about Final Fantasy games. And its characters and the character writing was something I really did enjoy as well in this game. It's a game about the boys and defeating a power-hungry maniac. Oh hey, by the way, if you made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate if you dropped a like and subscribe if you're not. It really helps the channel grow so I can make more videos like this. Okay, back to the video now. One thing that a Final Fantasy game must get right for it to be fun is the gameplay and combat. I will tell you right now that I absolutely despise the way that Final Fantasy XV controls, both in and out of combat. The controls feel so loose and slippery. There's nothing satisfying about it to me. Final Fantasy XV is an action RPG, and it's probably my fault that the combat got ruined for me because I did play Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rebirth, and 16 before playing 15, and I vastly prefer their action RPG combat systems compared to 15's. What I do like about 15's combat is Noctis' Warp Strike ability. Warp Strike basically zips you over towards the enemy you're targeting. I think it's a cool and useful ability, and I also like that Noctis can equip up to 4 weapons at a time, and that he has access to most of the different weapon types, which was cool, but I did end up sticking with the basic sword type because I didn't like how the other weapons felt. If you couldn't tell, I'm really picky about how the game feels. Magic also works differently in 15 compared to the other games. You actually craft your spells, and depending on the item you attach to the spell, it will give you different effects and such. I thought this was a neat way of incorporating magic into a more realistic world, and it was fun to see what different items did to the spell. There were also some really cool boss fights, especially against the gods. The Leviathan was my favorite fight, by the way. It was also kind of neat that you could link up with your party members during battle, and even though they're not playable, they still do contribute to the combat angle of the game, which I did really appreciate. Gladio's downhammer is extremely overpowered. That about covers all I liked from 15's combat. I felt the main battle system was very slippery. I never felt like I was in control. I got very frustrated when my blocks and dodges were inconsistent when I was being consistent. The combat just didn't feel satisfying to me, and that caused me to avoid combat in most scenarios. It also made the bosses a little bit extra annoying. Oh, and also, to lock onto an enemy, you have to hold down the button the entire time to stay locked on instead of pressing it once. This got really annoying really fast, and I felt restricted on what my fingers could do, and I would end up attacking the wrong enemy, if any enemy at all, because my finger would slip off the button. The out-of-combat controls feel a bit better, but they still weren't my favorite. It mainly comes down to jumping and sprinting. The version I played on PS4, in order to sprint, you either clicked in the left stick or you held square, which also is the attack button. Clicking in the stick is fine, lots of games do that, so fine. But holding down the attack button to sprint was really obnoxious when trying to sprint either in combat or past a group of enemies because the game would think that I was attacking and not sprinting. This caused me to engage in many battles that I was trying to avoid. Jumping is less egregious, but there was a secret dungeon that was 100% platforming, and let me tell you, this game was not designed to be a 3D platformer. Leave that to Mario and Astro, please. That dungeon did really scar me though, I am not gonna lie. I stayed up till 3 in the morning trying to beat it. While the controls weren't my favorite, I really did like the world design. The first half of the game takes place in the open world, and I think Square did a great job of filling the world with stuff to do. I had a good time exploring the world and especially driving the car around and seeing the sights. The world terrain design is especially unique in this game, and there are a ton of side quests, hunts, and extra dungeons. On top of those activities, there are character-specific skills to use and upgrade as well. For Noctis, there's fishing, and I absolutely despise fishing in this game. It was just not fun whatsoever. I hate fishing in real life, so I might be just a tad bit biased against it. When you set up camp at a campsite, Iggy will cook food for you based on the ingredients you've collected while exploring, and these meals will also give you stat buffs, so it's totally worth finding all the ingredients for the best meals. Gladio's skill involves walking. It's based on how many steps you take, and Prompto's skill is based on the pictures that he takes. I liked that each character has their own special skill, except fishing. It makes the fact that Noctis is the only playable character, if you don't count Royal Edition, feel like they contribute to the team from a gameplay standpoint. Even outside of the open world in the second half, the world design is still extremely unique. Even though the devs went for a more Earth-inspired world, they still gave it that Final Fantasy flair. My only issue though, and it isn't even an issue with the world itself, is that there is constant texture pop. It happened so much that it started to legitimately bother me. Overall, the gameplay really soured me as I found it to be not satisfying, but the world design made up for it with the abundance of activities in the open world and the striking landmarks both in the open world and the more linear sections of the game. It's a world that's Earth with a bunch of Final Fantasy-isms. Of all the legendary RPG series out there, none are known for their soundtrack like Final Fantasy is. Final Fantasy XV is no exception. I thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy XV's soundtrack, and it's no surprise because the one and only Yoko Shimomura composed the soundtrack. Yoko Shimomura is one of my favorite composers of all time. She's worked on so many games that I love, like Xenoblade Chronicles, Super Mario RPG. She's done arrangements for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and, of course, the small indie RPG series that nobody has ever heard of, Kingdom Hearts. In my opinion, her work on Final Fantasy XV is up there with her best, and I want to highlight some of my top tracks in this game. You'll notice that most of these do include Shimomura's iconic use of the piano and violin, and I'll start with the song that plays on the main menu, Somnus. This piece starts slowly with a focus on the violin, but then ramps up with more emphasis put on the piano. It's a very somber piece, and a version with vocals is used in the insomnia area near the end. You could very well use this piece to cure your own insomnia. Sticking with the slower paced pieces is Noctis' theme. This piece feels like a river slowly flowing, again with the piano and the violin. It's not somber, but it's also not joyous. It feels like peace. Probably the most iconic piece from this game, Valse di Fantastica. This piece plays when you leave the lead area, and it's very waltzy, like it would play during a grand ball. This is my favorite song from Final Fantasy XV, and I'm so down bad for its emphasis on the violin. I will be pushing real hard for this song to be played at my wedding. Alright, let's get these calm songs out of here and talk about some battle tracks. The battle theme that plays in the lead area, Stand Your Ground, is super intense. Its use of the violins playing the main melody with the brass in the background really gets my heart pumping, not to mention the iconic prelude was snuck into this piece. Last but not least, the ever so climactic Apocalypse Noctis. It plays during boss fights with the Astrals. From the second this piece starts, you are bombarded with a chanting choir, and as the song goes on, the intensity builds and builds. It's a very powerful piece. man, is it just me, or does this song kinda sound like Dragonborn from Skyrim? Overall, I really loved the music of Final Fantasy XV. There were a lot of fun, intense, and emotional pieces that make this feel like an exhilarating adventure. At the end of the day, Final Fantasy XV has left an interesting taste in my mouth. While I loved the game's story, world, and music, I really didn't care for the combat and controls. And don't even get me started on fishing. From its troubled beginnings as Versus XIII to its revival as 15, this game has cemented itself as an interesting entry in the Final Fantasy series. With all that said, I did really enjoy my time with Final Fantasy XV. While it wasn't my favorite, it still got a lot right, and I did have fun while playing it. And I was even able to snag its Platinum Trophy. I would love to see Square revisit this game and its world down the road, and maybe even finish those cancelled DLC episodes. Until that day comes, I will look back at Final Fantasy XV as a game that made me smile, laugh, and rage. A lot.